The John LeBang Show has been known to make people laugh, sing, think, scream, throw things in rage, and generally lose their minds. Listener discretion is advised.
Worldwide and out to the greater universe, you're listening to the John LeBang Show.
Greetings, Earthlings, and alert the media. This week's second hour of the John LeBang Show is headed your way. Your sunburned host is back for yet another 60 minutes of sonic vibrations. In this hour, we're going to cover the James Comey testimony. And if we get a little time towards the end of the show, because I'm not sure how long this is going to take, I'm condensing this down for you because I know 3 hours of testimony in front of congressional leaders is almost unbearable for anybody on the planet. So I'm condensing this down, and we're going to get the highlights and find out what really happened. We're going to focus on what the mainstream media is telling you versus what actually happened and what kind of fake news is involved with the mainstream media behind all this that we're, hearing in the news about what Comey said, because they know, as I know, most people aren't going to sit through 3 hours of congressional hearings. It'd kill most of us. So we're going to condense it all down for you, and we're going to play it in their words. And we're going to get past all the garbage of them kissing each other's rear and all the niceties there. We're also going to talk about one of our favorite senators out there as well. And if we have time later on in the show, we'll cover other things. But I'm not sure how long this is going to take, because there was a lot going on when it comes to the James Comey hearings. And there's a lot of good questions from, both sides. They at least, in my humble opinion, they at least gave him questions to where he had to answer them. And there were people that asked questions hoping for different answers, and you could tell. And he gave them answers I don't think they actually liked. But since we're doing this and we're rocking and rolling here, folks, we're going to get right to it because it's going to be jam-packed. Let's start with how James Comey tells us, the American people, in his opening statement, how the FBI protects America.
But at first, I want the American people to know this truth. The FBI is honest. The FBI is strong. And the FBI is and always will be independent.
Oh, they're independent, all right. Oh, they're only honest when, I don't know when they're honest, to be honest with you. Are they here to protect the American people? How many times have they been connected to one of these supposed terrorists who ends up blowing things or killing people? They were interviewing him and they're so good, they're so awesome that these guys get through, and we have to deal with it. Now, as we get to the questions and we get into the meat of the hearings, we find out one small truth, and here it is.
Do you have any doubt that Russia attempted to interfere in the 2016 elections?
None.
Do you have any doubt that the Russian government was behind the intrusions in the DNC and the DCCC systems and the subsequent leaks of that information?
No doubt.
Do you have any doubt that the Russian government was behind the cyber intrusion into state voter files?
No.
Do you have any doubt that officials of the Russian government were fully aware of these activities?
No doubt.
Are you confident that no votes cast in the 2016 presidential election were altered?
I'm confident. By the time when I left as director, I'd seen no indication of that whatsoever.
So they're saying that the Russians do what we do. They try to hack into foreign government systems. They try to find out information. They try to inform themselves on, well, political structures of things. But in the end, no votes, not one single vote, according to James Comey himself, was altered. So we've got an open investigation that includes, but not includes, Donald Trump and Trump associates, making Russia to be the bad guy because they're doing things, the same things that we do to practically every nation on the planet. And in the end, nothing changed. Donald Trump would still be president with the same amount of electoral votes. Yet some of the mainstream media is not reporting that. Not even in close to that context. You're hearing Russia, 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 bad, 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 hack, hack, hack. Here's another question asked of Mr. Comey.
Director Comey, did the president at any time ask you to stop the FBI investigation into Russian involvement in the 2016 U.S. elections?
Not to my understanding, no.
Did any individual working for this administration, including the Justice Department, ask you to stop the Russian investigation?
No.
So no one in the Trump administration, Trump himself, ever asked Comey to end the investigation. Yet in the mainstream media, that's not what you hear. That's not what Trump ordered Comey to stop the investigation. In this next cut, we have Comey explaining why he didn't report Trump's ordering him, even though hope was the word used. Hope. We're going to keep that word in mind. Trump hoped that Comey would end the investigation. Comey explains to everybody why he didn't do that.
Given what I knew at the time and even what I've learned since, I think it was the best way to try and protect the justice institution, including the FBI.
It was the best way to protect the justice system and the FBI. But what is he protecting them from? Let's listen to this next clip.
When did you become aware of the cyber intrusion?
The first there's all kinds of cyber intrusions going on all the time. The first Russia-connected cyber intrusion I became aware of in the late summer of 2015.
So in the late summer of 2015, Comey finds out that Russia is getting involved in hacking. But he says right there that there's all kinds of hacking. It's always happening. And we do it ourselves to foreign governments. So yes, we're trying to protect our country, but we can't be acting like we don't do it ourselves. And now we move on to the DC hackings.
Did you ever have access to the actual hardware that was hacked? Or did you have to rely on a third party to provide you the data that they had collected?
In the case of the DNC, and I believe the DCCC, but I'm sure the DNC, we did not have access to the devices themselves. We got relevant forensic information from a private party, a high-class entity that had done the work, but we didn't get direct access.
But no content?
Correct.
So not only did the FBI, who concluded Hillary was clean, squeaky clean, and then reopened the investigation and then closed it and screwed up the whole election cycle, messing with the whole country, the FBI concludes that it's Russian hacking, even though they had only secondhand information given to them by the DNC. They had no first-hand information. They were relying on the DNC, who you could say, because Hillary was the presidential candidate, was a target of the investigation that they were either involved with or they were, studying because of the Anthony Weiner situation. So they're going to take the word of the DNC, who had been hacked and the information had been given out by WikiLeaks, who WikiLeaks says it's not the Russians, but the FBI is going to believe the DNC that it's the Russians because for some other reason they have evidence that it's Russia tampering with the elections. That doesn't make sense. Here's another clip for you.
Unlike your dealings with presidents of either parties in your past experience, in every subsequent meeting or conversation with this president, you created a written record. Did you feel that you needed to create this written record of these memos because they might need to be relied on at some future date?
Sure. I created records after conversations, and I think I did it after each of our 9 conversations. If I didn't, I did it for nearly all of them, especially the ones that were substantive. I knew that there might come a day when I would need a record of what had happened, not just to defend myself, but to defend the FBI and our integrity as an institution and the independence of our investigative function. That's what made this so difficult. Is it was a combination of circumstances, subject matter, and the particular person.
Well, I'm going to leave that comment of particular person alone. You can make your own judgments on what he is talking about there. But he was all involved about protecting the FBI and his integrity. That's always the case when it comes to these kind of people in the government, protecting their integrity, whether that means they're lying, or whatever. But he just managed to keep detailed logs for Trump and nobody else because something is up with Trump. He had like a weird feeling or whatever. He figured, I better keep detailed logs when I'm discussing things with Mr. Donald Trump. Here's another clip for you.
A great deal has been made of whether the president, you are asked to, in effect, indicate whether the president was the subject of any investigation. And my understanding is prior to your meeting on January 6th, you discussed with your leadership team whether or not you should be prepared to assure then President-elect Trump that the FBI was not investigating him personally. Now, my understanding is your leadership team agreed with that, but was that a unanimous decision? Was there any debate about that?
It wasn't unanimous. One of the members of the leadership team had a view that although it was technically true, we did not have a counterintelligence file case open on then President-elect Trump. His concern was because we're looking at the potential, again, that's the subject of the investigation, coordination between the campaign and Russia, because it was President-elect Trump's campaign, this person's view was inevitably his behavior, his conduct will fall within the scope of that work, and so he was reluctant to make the statement that I made.
Now, if you listen to Comey there, it becomes very clear with the way he worded those sentences, that whole paragraph there. Anybody in the United States could face investigation because of some potential, possibly they could just say, well, there's a potential there, so we might need to investigate. And the FBI can then open some kind of file on you and investigate you because there might be a potential. Not that there is a threat there, not that there is a problem there, but potential, which means every possible American could be considered a potential threat. With the way he outlined that definition, that paragraph there. Now we move on to the next thing where he discusses the so-called loyalty. And boy, did he time it and say it in such a way so the mainstream media could cut this up and leave out the most important part of the sentence.
In fact, he asked specifically of loyalty.
Now that is all you're going to hear and all you have been hearing from the mainstream media. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. That's not the true context. Here's the entire sentence.
To build a relationship, in fact, he asked specifically of loyalty in the context of asking me to stay.
Loyalty in the context of asking him to stay. In other words, he's saying, hey man, be loyal, stay with us. We want you to stay on. That's what I'm understanding Comey just admitted. It's not that he was saying, loyal to me, that whatever I tell you to do, you do. It's, please stay on because I need good people here.
Of loyalty.
And you heard the grunts and the groan when he used loyalty, and he had that small, pregnant pause. Loyalty. Loyalty.
To build a relationship. In fact, he asked specifically of loyalty in the context of asking me to stay.
He made sure that the cameras were ready for this, that the reporters would hear this nice and clear.
He asked specifically of loyalty.
All right, folks, we're up against our first break, so we're going to take it here. We're going to continue this after we come back. This is probably going to dominate most of the hour. And so when we return, more. Stay tuned.
Don't think about touching that dial.
That would be a mistake.
The John LeBang Show will be right back after this.
That's guaranteed, man. Like some good Thai stick. If you are elderly, disabled, receiving SSI or Medicaid, and you have a medical need or require assistance with daily housework, shopping, grooming, medication, you may qualify for housekeeping at no cost. Call now. VIP Home Healthcare, 248-579-3805. VIP Home Healthcare, there when you need them. That's 248-579-3805. Check out the new book from Derek Shelmerdine,
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
It tells the story of rock and roll from its roots right up until the mid-70s punk.
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
Not just the music, but also the events that shaped the music.
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
It includes the backgrounds to recording sessions, singles, album releases, births and deaths, epic concerts, and festivals.
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
Shelmerdine has made a painstaking effort to document pretty much every event that would prove significant in shaping popular music.
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
Purchase the book at www.rockandrollunraveled.com. Follow him at Twitter at R&R Unraveled, and look him up on Facebook at Rock and Roll Unraveled.
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
By author Derek Shelmerdine.
Available now. You're listening to the John LeBang Show.
It's hydroponic radio for your brain, man.
Feel smarter yet?
In the context of asking me to stay.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue on with the James Comey testimony, we move on to this.
No. My impression was something big is about to happen. I need to remember every single word that is spoken.
So now he talks about how and the reasons why he started keeping a log, a journal, about the conversations he was having with President Trump. Because something big was about to happen. Now, in the next clip, James Comey himself tells us that the New York Times and the mainstream news is actually fake news and manufactured. Take a listen.
That report by the New York Times was not true. Is that a fair statement?
In the main, it was not true. And again, all of you know this, maybe the American people don't.
And all of them in Congress know it, but the American people don't. The media even knew it. But what they did, they chose to promote it as true. And their readers believed it because the New York Times must tell us the truth. That mainstream manufactured news, they can't lie to us. Now check out this next clip.
And we don't call the press to say, hey, you got that thing wrong about this sensitive topic.
And even though the FBI knew that they were running a fake news story, they didn't bother to contact the New York Times or anyone else for that matter and tell them you're publishing a lie, a fake news story. Stop it. We don't have to tell you why it's fake news. We just have to tell you that's a lie. And yet they didn't. Go on with yourself. Go ahead and tell a fake news story lie because that's okay. Now check out this next clip.
This is the president speaking. I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go. Now, those are his exact words, is that correct?
Correct.
And you wrote them here and you put them in quotes?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. He did not direct you to let it go.
Not in his words, no.
He did not order you to let it go.
Again, those words are not an order.
No.
So Trump never ordered James Comey to let the investigation go about Flynn. Not once. Comey admits it here. Yet the mainstream manufactured news is going to tell you that Trump did order Comey. He did forcefully suggest. He put Comey's job on the line. And it's all fake news. Fake news, again, from the mainstream manufactured news. And this entire process that I am going through here, one of the main things I'm doing this for is to show you how the mainstream manufactured news is going to twist the story, tell you lies, alter the truth to fit their narrative. Now we have another clip for you. Take a listen.
Well, the context and the president's words are what led me to that conclusion. As I said in my statement, I could be wrong, but
Comey, all through the hearings, I could be wrong. That's what I think. I could be wrong. I don't know the person. He's suggesting things and then saying, well, I could be wrong. That's a person who's just like throwing innuendo out there. You know, it could be this, but I could be wrong. And that way he's covering his butt. This is a CYA comment. And if you listen to the entire hearing, which I know the mainstream manufactured news was hoping you didn't, and most of you didn't, most of you ignored it, you're not going to know that all he was doing throughout the entire hearing was CYA, covering his own butt. Here's another clip for you.
But why didn't you stop and say, Mr. President, this is wrong. I cannot discuss this with you?
it's a great question. Maybe if I were stronger, I would have. I was so stunned by the conversation that I just took it in. And the only thing I could think to say, because I was playing in my mind, because I could remember every word he said, I was playing in my mind, what should my response be? And that's why I very carefully chose the words. And look,
this is a good question by Feinstein, believe it or not. Why didn't you stop and say, hey, Mr. President, this is crossing a line. Why didn't you? Why did you wait till now, till after you were fired to bring up this certain topic? Boy, and it's giving him a chance to get in front of the cameras again. Now we have another clip for you.
You told the president I would see what we could do. What did you mean?
that was kind of a slightly cowardly way of trying to avoid telling him we're not going to do that.
So Mr. Comey is admitting that he was a little cowardly. And I guess with the president asking you something, which I don't see him asking him, this is all inference. They're suggesting the president asked him when it was just a hope. I hope you can drop the case on Flynn. He's a good guy. Here's another clip for you.
Was that the only time he asked you to hopefully let it go?
Yes.
And in that meeting, as you understood it, he was asking not about the general Russia investigation. He was asking very specifically about the jeopardy that Flynn was in himself.
That's how I understood it. Yes, sir.
And as you perceived it, while it was a request that he hoped you did away with it, you perceived it as an order, given his position, the setting, and the like, and some of the circumstances.
Yes.
At the time, did you say anything to the president about that is not an appropriate request, or did you tell the White House counsel that is not an appropriate request? Someone needs to go tell the president that he can't do these things?
I didn't, no.
Okay. Why?
I don't know. I think, as I said earlier, I think the circumstances were such that I was a bit stunned and didn't have the presence of mind. And I don't know, I don't want to make you sound like I'm Captain Courageous. I don't know whether, even if I had the presence of mind, I would have said to the president, sir, that's wrong. I don't know whether I would have. Okay. But in the moment, it didn't come to my mind. What came to my mind is be careful what you say. And so I said, I agree, Flynn is a good guy.
So on the cloud, we keep talking about this cloud. You perceive the cloud to be the Russian investigation in general.
Yes, sir.
But the specific ask was that you would tell the American people what you had already told him, what you had already told the leaders of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, that he was not personally under investigation.
Yes, sir.
In fact, he was asking you to do what you have done here today.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, at that setting, did you say to the president that it would be inappropriate for you to do so, and then talk to the White House counsel or anybody, so hopefully they would talk to him and tell him that he couldn't do this?
First time I said, I'll see what we can do. Second time, I explained how it should work, that the White House counsel should contact the Deputy Attorney General.
So here, Rubio sets it up real nice. He makes Comey tell us that not only was Trump not under investigation, but Comey didn't want to do what he did for Clinton, where he came out and said no more charges, nothing on him, the investigation's over. He can't even come out and say Trump is not under investigation. We have to drag him down to a hearing to say that. So I think Rubio did a pretty good job of laying all that out for us. Now, on to another clip right here.
I was briefing him on it because we had been told by the media it was about to launch. We don't want to be keeping that from him. And if there was he needed to know this was being said. But I was very keen not to leave him with an impression that the Bureau was trying to do something to him. And so that's the context in which I said, sir, we're not personally investigating you.
So here we have Comey, who knows a fake news story is coming out. He's not willing to tell the fake news that is fake news. He's not willing to tell them to don't run that because that's a bunch of malarkey. But he's willing to contact the president and say, hey, Mr. President, something got out here and, the news is going to tell a lie about you. We can't do anything about it. We can't stop it, but we think you should know that we didn't mean it. It somehow got out from us, but we didn't mean it. I mean, gee whiz. Here's another clip for you.
And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend of mine to do it.
And was that Mr. Wittes?
No, no.
Who was that?
A good friend of mine who's a professor at Columbia Law School.
So here Comey admits that he hands out information to a third party, then that gets leaked to the media. Now let's remember, just a minute ago, he's like, Mr. President, I know this information came out or is coming out. We can't stop it. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's fake news. We can't stop it. But we don't want you to think we did it because it just came out from here and we really did it. But we don't want you to think that. Now he's admitting to giving information to a third party to leak to the news. The fake news? Yet he's not willing to reveal his source, just some professor at Columbia University. Sounds like a reporter. And we're supposed to believe that he wasn't the one behind the fake news that came out prior? See, as we get deeper into these hearings, as we see James Comey actually answering questions, we start piecing the giant puzzle together. And we start noticing that, or at least figuring out that Comey wasn't happy about getting fired. Comey wasn't exactly the best guy running the FBI ever. And now we see he's a master of CYA. That's all he's been doing. Here's another clip for you.
There should be no fuzz on this whatsoever. The Russians interfered in our election during the 2016 cycle. They did it with purpose. They did it with sophistication. They did it with overwhelming technical efforts. And it was an active measures campaign driven from the top of that government. There is no fuzz on that.
So here Comey is saying that the Russians hacked it. There's no doubt. Of course, no votes were changed. They have no evidence to suggest that the election would have turned out any different. But the Russians, who were trying to affect our elections, got in there and really worked it hard, even though we do those sorts of things in other countries. I understand it's a big deal and we can't let that happen. And maybe we need to beef up our security. Maybe the DNC needs to beef up their security. Maybe the Russians are the ones hacking, even though WikiLeaks said it wasn't the Russians. But hey, we're going to believe the DNC, who was headed by Hillary Clinton, who destroyed 33,000 emails, who claims the Russians hacked them, but wouldn't give the first-hand information to the FBI. It was second-hand information who the FBI just accepted. All right, folks, we're up against the half-hour break. We got to take a timeout. More on the flip side of this James Comey situation and the testimony and Donald Trump's non-investigation after this.
Don't go anywhere. The John LeBang Show will be right back.
You'd be crazy to change the dial now.
And I'd like to welcome our new sponsor, Pane in the Glass, commercial and residential window cleaning. For a beautiful, sparkling shine that's crystal clear, call Pane in the Glass Window Cleaning. You can find them on Facebook at Pane in the Glass.
Hey, man, it's at the bottom of the hour, man. Do you know where your kids are, man?
Forces of darkness, the treasonable minds who collaborate, must and will be wiped from the face of the earth.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we move forward in this second half hour of the second hour of this week's broadcasting. We continue on the James Comey testimony and hearing before Congressional Schmendricks.
I don't want to run out of time here. Let me make one other point. In reading your testimony, January the 3rd, January the 27th, and March the 30th, it appears to me that on all three of those occasions, you, unsolicited by the president, made the point to him that he was not a target of an investigation.
Correct, yes, sir.
So here, Comey admits on three separate occasions that he goes to the president without the president asking him. He goes to the president and says, hey, you're not under investigation. Of course, he won't deal with that with the press. He won't talk to the press about that, but he says to the president, hey, man, you're not under investigation. We got you covered, man. You're cool. But he won't tell the press that, and he won't tell the American people that until he's called into some hearings. Here's another clip.
I think that's very important for the American people to understand that this is very much a forward-looking investigation in terms of how do we understand what they did and how do we prevent it. Would you agree that that's a big part of our role here?
Yes, sir, and it's not a Republican thing or a Democratic thing. It really is an American thing. They're going to come for whatever party they choose to try and work on behalf of, and they're not devoted to either in my experience. They're just about their own advantage, and they will be back.
That's my observation. I don't think Putin is a Republican or a Democrat. He's an opportunist.
I think that's a fair statement.
Okay, so the Russians are for themselves. We didn't know that. We had to take 3 or 4 minutes during a hearing to discuss that. That mean there was coming a point with it, and this is why many people don't watch this, because some of the niceties and some of this other gobbledygook that we have to deal with, oh, Russia's for themselves and they're not Republican or Democrat. No, they're Russians, and they are going to do what they think is in their best interest. I mean, we hack into how many other databases? There were stories all during the Obama administration where the United States was getting involved with secret wiretapping of foreign officials. That's what governments do. It's called espionage. All governments do that. To have a big giant hearing about it, all we have to do, if you ask me, I mean, this is simplified, if you will. We beef up our security all over the place, and we make it so the Russians or anyone else can't hack. Instead of holding hearings, worthless hearings costing the taxpayers all kinds of money, giving TV time to a worthless former FBI director, when the problem could be solved by beefing up our cybersecurity without hearings. Just do it. Here's another clip.
On the Flynn investigation, is it not true that Mr. Flynn was and is a central figure in this entire investigation of the relationship between the Trump campaign and the Russians?
I can't answer that in an open setting, sir.
Certainly Mr. Flynn was part of the so-called Russian investigation. Can you answer that question?
I have to give you the same answer.
What? You can't answer? The media says he's part of it. He was fired by Trump. You can't answer that part of the question? You can't answer if Flynn is under investigation? Does that mean he might not be under investigation? And all this stuff is just a big giant smokescreen distraction? Maybe to give you some FaceTime? Here's another clip.
Yes, it rings in my ear as kind of, will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest?
I was just going to quote that. In 1170, December 29, Henry II said, "Who will rid me of this meddlesome priest?" And then the next day he was killed.
Oh, and except no one was killed. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen. But I'm saying, it sounds like a little bit of backdoor collusion. Oh, two people thought of some ancient saying? Here's another clip.
Back to Mr. Flynn. Would closing out the Flynn investigation have impeded the overall Russian investigation?
No. Well, unlikely, except to the extent, there's always a possibility if you have a criminal case against someone and you bring it and squeeze them, you flip them, and they give you information about something else. But I saw the two as touching each other, but separate.
Are you saying that if you didn't investigate Flynn, if they shut that case down, it wouldn't impede the Russian investigation? That's not what the mainstream manufactured news is telling us. This whole exercise, ladies and gentlemen, is proving once and for all the mainstream manufactured news does not report the news correctly. They make it up. They twist it. They make it fit a narrative. Here's another clip.
The individual that you told about your memos that then was sent on to the New York Times, did they have a copy of those memos, or were they told orally of those memos?
Had a copy. I had a copy at the time.
Do they still have a copy of those memos?
It's a good question. I think so. I guess I can't say for sure sitting here, but I guess I don't know, but I think so.
So the question is, could you ask them to hand that copy right back to you so you could hand them over to this committee?
Potentially.
Oh, so valuable data, stuff that was leaked to the press, you're telling me that it only can be potentially given to Congress. Valuable evidence in this, if you ask me. These secret, little memos, he kept track of all the conversations with Trump that was leaked to the press. Congress wants a copy, and he's like, well, maybe, potentially. We'll see what we can do. Guess that only counts. We see how that worked out with Trump, right? He said, well, we'll see what we can do. Didn't work out so well. Here's another clip.
You had mentioned before about some news stories and news accounts. Without having to go into all the names and the specific times and to be able to dip into all that, have there been news accounts about the Russia investigation, about collusion, about this whole event, or accusations that as you read the story, you were stunned about how wrong they got the facts?
Yes, there have been many, many stories purportedly based on classified information about lots of stuff, but especially about Russia, that are just dead wrong.
You're telling me that the mainstream manufactured news is making up stuff about Russia now? So we have the Clinton administration and the Democrats saying Russia hacked them, yet they won't give information out. We have all these hearings about it. We have this giant investigation about it. We find out from Comey right now that the news media is putting out so-called classified information that is false, that is fake, that are one big giant manufactured news item. Here's another clip.
I was interested in your comment that you made as well, that the president said to you, if there were some satellite associates of his that did something wrong, it would be good to find that out. That the president seemed to talk to you specifically on March the 30th and say, I'm frustrated that the word is not getting out that I'm not under investigation, but if there are people that are in my circle that are, let's finish the investigation. Is that how you took it as well?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So Trump sits down and says, hey, I'm frustrated that it's not coming out, that I'm not being investigated. But if there's anybody in my clique, anybody that's a satellite of me, anybody in my administration or somewhere right below it, well, that is part of an investigation. We need to get this concluded quick. We find them and get them out of there. Comey just admitted that. Now, here's another clip.
And then you made a comment earlier about the Attorney General, previous Attorney General, asking you about the investigation on the Clinton emails, saying that you've been asked not to call it an investigation anymore, but to call it a matter. And you had said that confused you. Can you give us additional details on that?
Well, it concerned me because we were at the point where we had refused to confirm the existence, as we typically do, of an investigation for months. And it was getting to a place where that looked silly because the campaigns were talking about interacting with the FBI in the course of our work. The Clinton campaign at the time was using all kinds of euphemisms, security review, matters, things like that for what was going on. We were getting to a place where the Attorney General and I were both going to have to testify and talk publicly about it. And I wanted to know, was she going to authorize us to confirm we had an investigation? And she said, yes, but don't call it that, call it a matter. And I said, why would I do that? And she said, just call it a matter. And again, you look back in hindsight, you think, should I have resisted harder? I just said, all right, this isn't a hill worth dying on. And so I just said, okay.
So during the Clinton fiasco, during the election and all, when Bill Clinton and the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch over there, Lynch mob, met together in the airport there, he had a problem with it. Yet, what happened? Nothing happened from that. We didn't get big giant investigation just over that single little thing. There was, oh no investigation here, no investigation here. And then we hear, when we do get a little bit of congressional oversight, most of the people dragged in over the thing is pleading the Fifth Amendment or stonewalling. Or they might have learned something from Mr. Comey here and did a lot of CYA because he's a master of it. Here's one more clip from this exchange.
The press is going to completely ignore it, and that's what happened. When I said, we have opened a matter, they all reported the FBI has an investigation open. And so that concerned me because that language tracked the way the campaign was talking about the FBI's work, and that's concerning.
It gave the impression that the campaign was somehow using the same language as the FBI because you were handed the campaign language and told to be able to use the campaign language.
And again, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but it gave the impression that the Attorney General was looking to align the way we talked about our work with the way a political campaign was describing the same activity, which was inaccurate. We had a criminal investigation open. As I've said before, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We had an investigation open at the time, and so that gave me a queasy feeling.
So now we find out that Loretta Lynch mob tells him not to call it an investigation, but a matter. And they're using talking points from the DNC, same exact talking points, and he goes along with it. No big deal. Oh, I thought it was a problem, but oh well, we're just going to go along with it because I've caused enough trouble in the election or something like that. Here's another clip.
But we're talking about a foreign government that using technical intrusion and lots of other methods tried to shape the way we think, we vote, we act. That is a big deal.
It's such a big deal, according to James Comey, that the election results are no different than they would have been because they didn't actually affect the election. They didn't change any votes. People voted the way they did, and the results were exactly or close enough to the exact number, and doesn't look like, according to Comey, that Russia had anything to do in actually affecting the election via the results, but every other way they affected the election. And of course, he's taken out of the fact that he might have affected the election. And I remember Democrats all up in arms about that, but he might have affected the election by announcing that there was an investigation, then there was no investigation, then they were maybe possibly reopening the investigation with Clinton, and then they were clearing her. So the Russians affecting the election are a big deal. But James Comey affecting the election, or possibly affecting the election, with his craziness, with his insanity, with his dragging the country through the mud, with the whole she's being investigated, not investigated, maybe investigated, we don't know. She's clear. It's unbelievable. Now here's another clip.
All I can do is hope.
Is that a directive, Mr. Comey? All you can do is hope. President Trump said he hoped Flynn would be cleared, and that was a directive to you. So is that a directive? All you can do is hope. All you can do is hope that those tapes come out. That what? That you're cleared of something, that people can look the other way over your stupidity. But the guy is a CYA artist, and because he writes really nice, and they were so impressed with how he had detailed information. And we're going to get to that here in a minute. Detailed information on every conversation with Trump. Here's another clip.
I think I did what I had to do. I knew it was going to be very bad for me personally, and the consequence of that might have been, if Hillary Clinton was elected, I might have been terminated. I don't know. I really don't.
Yes, James Comey. Chances are if Hillary would have won, you probably would have been fired anyways. So you're fired, and you can say the Republican Donald Trump fired you instead of Hillary, and the Democrats and the news media can avoid that fiasco and just, say, oh, bad Donald Trump because he's under some investigation, which he's not under an investigation, according to you, James Comey. Yet you couldn't tell the media, the public that. You let the fake news run with a fake story, but you won't tell the media the truth because that might do something. That might affect something, but the fake news wouldn't affect anything, right? We got to take another break as time is just flying on by. Fourth segment coming your way after this.
Where do you think you're going? Hey, man, don't go anywhere, man. The John LeBang Show will be right back.
Are you crazy? Fans, do you need a video for your brand new song but don't have a lot of money? Then contact John LeBang. His reasonable rates, professional look, and fast turnarounds will help get that song off the ground. Contact him at jlebang.com. If you want to contact the John LeBang Show, feel free to send an email to jlebang@live.com. And if you're on Twitter, look him up at John LeBang. And don't forget to go to his Facebook page at The John LeBang Show. Banger. Now here's John.
And that's incredibly important, and I forget my exact words. I passed along the president's message about the importance of aggressively pursuing leaks of classified information, which is a goal I share. And I passed that along to the Attorney General. I think it was the next morning in a meeting, but I did not tell him about the Flynn part.
So supposedly Trump does this inappropriate thing, and he talks to his boss, that's Comey here, he talks to his boss and doesn't bring it up. He brings up other things, but he doesn't bring up the supposed unappropriate action taken by Donald Trump. Here's some more for you.
Let me turn to a couple statements by one of my colleagues, Senator Feinstein. She was the ranking member on this committee until January, which means she had access to information that only she and Chairman Burr did. She's now the senior Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, meaning she has access to the FBI that most of us don't. On May 3rd, on CNN's Wolf Blitzer show, she was asked, do you have evidence that there was in fact collusion between Trump associates and Russia during the campaign? She answered, not at this time. On May 18th, at the same show, Mr. Blitzer said, the last time we spoke, Senator, I asked if you had actually seen any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and you said to me, and I'm quoting you now, you said, not at this time. Has anything changed since we last spoke? Senator Feinstein said, well, no, it hasn't.
So Feinstein goes on television and says, hey, Trump, there's nothing on him. There's no active investigation, nothing on Trump. Yet the mainstream media can't run with that one. Their own Democrat says it. But they find ways to say, oh, well, this or that and the other thing. They don't want to tell you that Trump is not under investigation. They're finding every other way to promote the situation in a certain narrative to make it look like Trump is under investigation when he's not. Now, here's another clip.
Mr. Comey, in 2004, you were a part of a well-publicized event about an intelligence program that had been recertified several times, and you were acting Attorney General when Attorney General John Ashcroft was incapacitated due to illness. There was a dramatic showdown at the hospital here. The next day, you said that you wrote a letter of resignation and signed it before you went to meet with President Bush to explain why you refused to certify it. Is that accurate?
Yes, I think so.
At any time in the 3.5 months you were the FBI director during the Trump administration, did you ever write and sign a letter of recommendation and leave it on your desk?
Letter of resignation? No, sir.
Letter of resignation?
No, sir.
So despite all of the things that you've testified to here today, you didn't feel this rose to the level of an honest but serious difference of legal opinion between accomplished and skilled lawyers in that 2004 episode?
I wouldn't characterize the circumstances in 2004 that way, but to answer, no, I didn't encounter any circumstance that led me to intend to resign, consider to resign. No, sir.
So those supposed inappropriate words that President Donald Trump told to Mr. Comey here, that he hopes the Flynn investigation will go away, that maybe, hopefully in the future, there won't be a Flynn investigation, that's not bad enough to, send your resignation letter. Some other things in your past, you did that. You turned in a resignation letter because you were appalled at some kind of situation. But the Trump investigation that does not exist, the Flynn investigation that you can't admit to it even existing, there's a possible thing there, but we don't know because you have to talk about it in private, in closed doors, so the American people can't know the truth because something is classified. You're willing to resign back in the past, but the thing that you're claiming is so heinous right now, is so terrible, this bad feeling you got from Donald Trump because he asked you, he hoped, it wasn't even asking, he hoped, oh, I hope this goes away. It's like, I hope it doesn't rain. Might still rain. It's not a directive for me. I hope it doesn't rain. Now it can't rain in my town because I hoped it. It's just a bunch of crap. It's just James Comey, CYA. That's it. Comey, CYA. He is a master of it. He doesn't keep records with other presidents, but he keeps records with Trump because he might, he had a bad feeling about Trump that something was coming down. Here's another clip.
Let me take you back to the Clinton email investigation. I think you've been cast as a hero or a villain, depending on the whose political ox is being gored at many different times during the course of the Clinton email investigation, even now perhaps. But you clearly were troubled by the conduct of the sitting Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, when it came to the Clinton email investigation. You mentioned the characterization that you'd been asked to accept that this was a matter and not a criminal investigation, which you said it was. There was the matter of President Clinton's meeting on the tarmac with the sitting Attorney General at a time when his wife was a subject to a criminal investigation, and you suggested that perhaps there are other matters that you may be able to share with us later on in a classified setting. But it seems to me that you clearly believe that Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, had an appearance of a conflict of interest on the Clinton email investigation. Is that correct?
I think that's fair. I didn't believe she could credibly decline that investigation, or at least not without grievous damage to the Department of Justice and to the FBI.
And under Department of Justice and FBI norms, wouldn't it have been appropriate for the Attorney General, or if she had recused herself, which she did not do, for the Deputy Attorney General to appoint a special counsel. That's essentially what's happened now with Director Mueller. Would that have been an appropriate step in the Clinton email investigation, in your opinion?
Certainly a possible step, yes, sir.
And were you aware that Ms. Lynch had been requested numerous times to appoint a special counsel and had refused?
Yes, from, I think members of Congress had repeatedly asked, yes, sir.
Yours truly did on multiple occasions. And that heightened your concerns about the appearance of a conflict of interest with the Department of Justice, which caused you to make what you have described as an incredibly painful decision to basically take the matter up yourself, and led to that July press conference.
Yes, sir. After the former President Clinton, met on the plane with the Attorney General, I considered whether I should call for the appointment of a special counsel.
So now that we have the special counsel, it's okay now, but back during Loretta Lynch, even though Comey says, hey, there's a conflict of interest there, we're not hearing the Democrats or the mainstream manufactured news, and we didn't hear back at the meeting between Clinton and Loretta Lynch mob. We didn't hear her recuse herself. We didn't hear the media wanting to have her recuse herself. And we find out there is a conflict of interest. Comey even thought it. The media doesn't care. The Democrats don't care, but they care under Trump. They didn't care under Clinton, but they care under Trump. Now, the final little bit for this Comey hearing, I wanted to focus on our good friend John McCain, who obviously is losing his mind. Listen to him as he speaks at this hearing and tell me if this man doesn't need to step down or somebody take him out of office and just go away and retire, because he's crazy, he's nuts, he is incoherent.
In the case of Hillary Clinton, you made the statement that there wasn't sufficient evidence to bring a suit against her, although it had been very careless in their behavior. But you did reach a conclusion in that case that it was not necessary to further pursue her. Yet at the same time, in the case of Mr. Comey, you said that there was not enough information to make a conclusion. Tell me the difference between your conclusion as far as former Secretary Clinton is concerned and Mr. Trump. Secretary Clinton or any of her associates is completed.
Yes, as of July the 5th, the FBI completed its investigative work, and that's what I was announcing, what we had done and what we had found.
Well, at least in the minds of this member, there's a whole lot of questions remaining about what went on, particularly considering the fact that, as you mentioned, it's a, quote, big deal as to what went on during the campaign. So I'm glad you concluded that part of the investigation, but I think that the American people have a whole lot of questions out there, particularly since you just emphasized the role that Russia played. And obviously, she was a candidate for president at the time, so she was clearly involved in this whole situation where fake news, as you just described it, big deal, took place. You're going to have to help me out here. In other words, we'll complete the investigation of anything that former Secretary Clinton had to do with the campaign is over, and we don't have to worry about it anymore.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for yet another hour of The John LeBang Show. I'd like to thank all of our affiliate stations across the fruited plain. Don't forget to go to our website. That's www.jlebang.com. Thank you all for listening. And until the vibrations of my vocal cords reach your ears again, this is John LeBang signing off from the Banger Studios. And now over to John in Westland. What say you?
Hi, everyone. I'm John from Jackson. We're trying to gather up votes for us to play the Chevrolet Rock on the Riverfront concert series. Just go to either the WCSX website or jacksonband.com and just follow the prompts to vote for us, and we'll be able to get them and play our show.
And when is the deadline?
June 16th.
Thanks for your call.